7:02. Okay, Mr. Clerk, the time is 7:02 p.m., Tuesday, May 1st. I'd like to call this General Committee meeting to order. First, if I can get a motion to approve the agenda as amended with the added items. Moved by Councillor Tom, seconded by Councillor Perry. Any comments or questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Declarations of pecuniary interest. Seeing none. Presentations. We have one presentation this evening. Mr. Mike Walters, our Chief Administrative Officer at Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority. Mr. Walters, if I can get you to state your name, you'll receive a signal at 1 minute, and you'll get, I believe it's 5, is it 5 minutes or 10 minutes for this one? 10 minutes? 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here tonight. A while back, we got a request to essentially answer some questions with what we were doing with climate change from some of the councillors. So I thought instead of sending a letter, I'd come in person and provide you a bit of an overview of what we're doing at the Conservation Authority. So first of all, climate change is very real. We all know that. It's substantially impacting our economy, our way of life, the environment, and social well-being. We're seeing an increase in global temperatures. We're seeing a 2-degree temperature increase within the watershed in the last 20 years. We've documented that, and that energy is causing issues with respect to extreme weather events. So we're seeing more flooding, more violent storms are being reported, and it's not just here, it's worldwide, as we've seen. We have an obligation through our Conservation Authorities Act to protect the residents within our watershed, as does the municipality within your municipal boundaries. So there's two ways that we're responding to climate change. Right now there's mitigation, which really consists of reducing carbon footprint by reducing greenhouse gas. What I'm going to talk about tonight is adaptation, and I'm going to specifically focus on the adaptation which involves reducing the harm to individuals. I don't have time to go into building resilient natural systems for watersheds, but so adaptation, reducing the risk of flooding, that is our primary goal at the Conservation Authority. Water is the new fire. This is a quote from the Insurance Bureau of Canada. It is now water-related damage is the #1 cost with respect to catastrophic events within Canada. And we see a lot of flooding, and the flooding is caused primarily due to three things: allowing development within the floodplain, cumulative urban growth without adequate stormwater runoff, and the extreme weather events that we're seeing across the watershed. So we have a water risk management program at the Conservation Authority. There's three main components to that program: floodplain management, flood forecast and warning, and stormwater management with respect to development. And recently we've added urban restoration, and that's significant, and I'll mention that in a bit more detail. So floodplain management, is this what it sounds like? We have our own Ontario regulation. It's 17906, which prohibits development within a floodplain, especially for habitable space. You can build parking lots in areas that keep grade flat, as long as certain conditions are met. But generally, new homes, any habitable space is not allowed within the floodplain. We do not engineer structures to reduce or stop flooding. We don't build dikes like they do down in the States. We're not the Army Corps of Engineers. Avoidance is the policy of the province of Ontario, and it's worked very well as we've moved forward with new growth within the watershed. Our floodplain mapping is based on Hurricane Hazel, which is a greater than 300-year event. That means that this event should occur once every 300 plus years. So there's a lot of conservatism built into the extent of the floodplain area. And as I said, no new habitable development is permitted. There is a lot of existing development, though. These guidelines in our watershed weren't put in place till the late 50s and early 60s. And as a result, a lot of the urban areas did build up. And because of that, we also are in the flood management business. And this is where we have to ensure that the people that are at risk are forewarned of an impending event and are evacuated. So we've undertaken a lot of mapping products, and these are just two examples. This is downtown Aurora, Wellington Street. The big red building at the bottom is actually the the Board of Ed building, which actually spans the watercourse and is very prone to flooding. What we've done is we have mapped out all the buildings that are at risk, all the roads that are at risk. It's part of our emergency management system mapping, which we provide to our regional municipality and our local municipalities so that they can, in turn, when a flood event is coming, notify their EMS folks, and they can go out and they can evacuate these areas to ensure there is no loss of life. And we simulate training days. The last one was just last year with York Region, where we actually hosted a day where we threw a number of flood events at them, and then we gauge how well they can respond and react and how they best manage the flooding issues that we raise. So in the event of a real flood event, they'll be prepared and they'll know what to do. Flood forecast and warning is the other part of our program, and that really involves a host of information that we collect across the board. From information that we collect within our watershed, we have real-time gauges that predict and show stream response. We have climate gauges, but we also look at models which can predict storm impacts of storm events as they come in. So we're looking at information from our federal, provincial partners, even the American NOAA data. And that radar and other information provides us with lots of early warning on those large storm events like the Hurricane Hazel, so that we can get the word out well in advance. What we're concerned about right now is these extreme events, and they're very localized events. The one that was in Burlington, for example, it dropped almost a year of rainfall in one storm. And those events can't really be predicted with any great accuracy. They occur really rapidly, and we have to make sure that we have enough resilience within our system to ensure that public safety isn't at risk. So that's where we're coming into stormwater management and restoration. And I've been in front of council, I think it was last year, regarding the Lake Simcoe Phosphorus Offset Program. It's one of the new programs which is providing a lot of the revenue for us to undertake projects to reduce flooding within the urban fabric. And that's really important. We're also looking at flood relief programs where there might be a flood caused by some infrastructure, and the removal of that infrastructure would reduce the floodplain and, again, take people out of harm's way. We also have new development guidelines, and I'm really proud to say we are the only authority in Ontario with these guidelines, and actually one of the few agencies in Canada with them. Vancouver is the only other city right now that has these in place. We control 90% of the storm events for new development on site. That means 25 millimeters must be controlled by any new development, and that has to be controlled on site. And most of that we want back into the ground, so there's not this issue with cumulative impact of water running off. We're actually reducing the volume of water which is going to our streams, and that reduces flood risk. There's also other benefits with that, such as the water quality, which I've talked about in the past, and reduction of phosphorus and other harmful pollutants going into our watercourse. So the outcome of that program is really we're reducing the risk of life, loss of life, property damage, social disruption, and as well, we're getting a lot of economic benefits, just the work itself that we're generating with respect to the funds. And these funds are coming from the development industry, and they're going to our municipal partners at 100% funding, so that you can undertake those works. These are just two examples of projects. One's an older project, the one on the, I guess it would be your right, my left, is an old stormwater facility. It's called an engineered wetland. It's on the Bathurst Street, and it actually infiltrates about 18% of the water that falls into it. And again, that reduces that cumulative flow. The other one is the Aurora Community Center, and it's the new low-impact development parking lot which was built. And I'm really proud to say this takes the runoff and puts it into the ground. There's very little runoff from the site associated with the rooftop or the parking lot, because of the measures that were put in place. And again, this was done in collaboration, cooperation with your staff. And you have a plan in place, and we're looking to implement that plan over the next 10 years with this money that we're getting in through the Phosphorus Offset Program. So summary and conclusion, climate change is resulting in more frequent flood events. The 1 in 100 year event, which means it's only supposed to happen once every 100 years, it's actually happening every 20 years now. And if you're unfortunate enough to live in Newmarket, it's almost once a year, on Tuesdays for some reason. I haven't figured that out. Our mapping, because it's based on Hurricane Hazel, it's quite large and conservative, so it's going to deal with the big storm events, but we are going to see more frequency of flooding. Therefore, people that are more flood prone are going to see wet backyards. Hopefully, by doing better stormwater management practices in the new areas, as well as retrofitting the existing areas, we're going to see a significant reduction in that flood flow. And again, there always needs to be continued investment in flood management, relief and forecasting. And there are opportunities in Aurora where we can actually reduce the floodplain and take people out of harm's way. So I'd be more than happy to talk with staff about those projects in the future. So with that, I think I've used up my 10 minutes or 5 minutes. I'd like to thank you, and if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Walters. It was perfect timing, actually. So first, can I get a motion to receive the presentation? Moved by Councillor Humphrey, seconded by Mayor Daw. Any comments or questions about the presentation? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Walters, and I appreciate you giving us all this information. It came out of a notice of motion about flood preparation for Aurora, and so, you know, what I heard you speak to is certainly about helping municipalities with regards to practices and procedures and policies and running test exercises. But I guess the bottom line, you know, is Aurora well prepared in the event of a storm?
I don't think any municipality can say they're really well prepared, but because of the authority and the drills that we've run, we're better prepared than most. Certainly every landowner has to know whether or not they're within a floodplain and whether they're prone to flooding. There's all sorts of materials on our website should you be in a floodplain, and there's mapping which you can pull up and see whether you're in a floodplain. There's directions on what to do, how to prepare for floods, and really it is up to the individual landowner to know where they are, but conservation authorities and our municipal partners have been doing a good job. We have not seen a death in our watershed since Hurricane Hazel. So that's a lot to be said with respect to flood control.
Appreciate it, and I understand why you can not really say anybody's ever well prepared for an event like that, but is there any best practices that we haven't currently adopted that you would ask us to consider?
Not at this time. Certainly we're always looking to improve our flood prediction program, but that requires obviously resource. We're working with our provincial and federal partners to try to increase that. We are currently waiting to hear back on a grant from the National Disaster Mitigation Program, and I'm very confident that we will receive that, and it will be looking at, again, how we can best manage on a watershed scale stormwater management to reduce the risk of flooding.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Walters, for coming tonight. My first question was answered, but you mentioned that the LRCA has collected data for many, many years and cataloged all the changes that have taken place in the climate. Is that information readily available on your website?
Through the chair. We're currently publishing a lot of it. A lot of it's in scientific journals, though, and papers which aren't easily accessible to the public. So yes, we are looking at how do we best translate that information out to everybody. Right. So somebody that wants to look at a river discharge record for 112 years, for example, and see that there's slight changes, that's not very exciting. What's exciting is the outcome that, yeah, you're seeing a lot more flow in the winter months, which you shouldn't be, and a lot less in the summer months. And that speaks to the seasonality of climate change. So that information is going to be available in the very near future. We already have some fact sheets on climate change, but again, some of the actual new science, it takes a while for us to get it out to the public.
Great. I just think that it's obviously relevant when you're talking about this kind of stuff. So I'm encouraged that the peer-reviewed studies and all that kind of stuff will be available to the public as soon as possible. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tom. Councillor Abel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Walters, welcome back again. Thank you. I have 3 questions. I heard a comment from the Provincial Ministry of Environment saying that the phosphorus levels had been rising lately, and it was attributed to the the climate change and the winter heavy rains that wash off all the fertilizers and brings it back in. Just a quick comment on that, if you would.
Through Mr. Chair. Walters. That is correct. It's that seasonality I was just mentioning. In the past, we would have a winter. You would have freeze up, and you wouldn't have any thaws until the spring. Now we're seeing repeated thaws throughout the winter because the temperatures increased within the atmosphere. So you're seeing that energy translated into thaws and rain events in January and February, where they would have been snow events in the past. So whenever you have rain running down on frozen ground, it's just like running on cement. It's hard. The water's not going to infiltrate, so it runs off and it picks up all of the pollutants and washes them in. So absolutely correct.
That's great, and a great project on the ACC because it is in the floodplain and it is right in one of the bottlenecks where we see flooding. And I do believe the water is to Tannery Creek that runs from south to north, and we often see the floodplain most dramatically in the St. Andrews soccer fields. So it's good that you're mitigating upstream to maybe perhaps mitigate that, and that it's all returned back in because it is a very sensitive area. My last question is about above that on the north side of Wellington, where we see a lot of thin, fast-moving water. The tannery lands have mitigated some of that. My question is what is the role of the vegetation and trees play along those banks to sort of slow down flooding? Is that a recommendation?
Mr. Walters.
Through Mr. Chair, the trees are great for mitigation, so they provide oxygen, so they're a carbon mitigator. They reduce carbon footprint. The roots actually help water infiltrate. And not only did they help the water infiltrate, but they hold the banks in place. So there's stability also of the stream banks, so you don't see the stream banks eroding with the peak flows, which can happen when you don't have vegetation. So one of the premier climate change adaptation for building resilience is tree planting. And you'll see a lot more of it in the future, I'm sure.
I imagine a canopy is significant as well because it would lessen the impact of part of the infiltration rather than just like, as you said, a hard surface where it could just fly in. And so then my last question is in the Highland Gate, there's a condo going on and they're rerouting the river, as I understand. It's a huge building, so very close to the water. Is that not identified as a floodplain right in there, if you're familiar with it?
It wouldn't be allowed unless it was grandfathered. Existing structures can be placed within the floodplain. I'm not as entirely familiar with that. I could come back. I'd have to look at the information. My first feeling would be no, it isn't in the floodplain. If it is in the floodplain and it's been grandfathered, then it would have to be flood-proofed, which means that the structure would have to withstand flood. All of the openings, windows, doors would be above the flood elevation, and there would be no electrical or any utility within the floodplain area itself.
Well, I'm certain that all that has been looked at. It just intuitively, to me, it just seems it's going to have an impact on the banks, the vegetation, all those things we just previously talked about while they construct it and while it grows. So those are two factors that are concerning because that comes into Wellington, and that's naturally one of our first places of flooding is right on Wellington. As it comes down west of Yonge into where Maunders is, you often see that flooded out there.
They would be subject to the new regulation, so they would have to control that 25 millimeters on site. So they can do that in a number of ways. They can put rooftop storage, they can put infiltration low impact development devices, but they would be required to control that. So they should not be contributing. And this is the importance of the new regulation moving forward. With all new growth, there won't be the impact that you saw with old growth. Added to that is this idea that we're going to come in and work to retrofit a large part of the urban fabric, and hopefully we can make Aurora a safer place with respect to flood damage.
I want to thank you very much for pointing that out, because as that development goes along, I'm sure our planning department will be able to convey that to the developer.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Apel. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Walters, for coming to Aurora and to present. I'm keenly aware that the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority is often in the middle of between development and non-development, and so I'm curious as to know what the volumes are like and how much staff you have to deal with the volumes of analysis you guys have to do before a project is. A development project is started.
Mr. Walters.
So through Mr. Chair, there's a lot of work associated with just getting one subdivision in and out the door. Now we have changed our business practice We require pre-consultation with the developer prior to them actually providing us any reports or plans. That pre-consultation actually involves a workshop where we sit down with the developer and we look at the best options available for looking at stormwater on the site. We call them design charrettes. They've been hugely successful. The industry likes them. We're seeing that it is reducing the review time, and we're getting a much better product at the end of the day. Essentially, you can look at where the areas that are natural heritage that you have to stay out of, where are the areas with best drainage that you would actually promote stormwater going to before you even put a design, any street layout on that property. And as I said, we're getting better product. We're actually being able to get them out the door sooner. We have about 103 full-time staff now, and the majority, our biggest department is our planning and development services. We just hired 2 more engineers to undertake stormwater review. And because of the phosphorus offset program and the requirements for quality, as well as our new guidelines, we're keeping them very busy. So on average, it takes anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to get a plan of subdivision through, depending on how well the development industry wants to work with us.
Okay. Thank you. And first, and this question is also for the subdivisions as well as the smaller projects, 2-3 dozen homes at a time. So you mentioned that you sit down with the builders to ensure that you get a better product and they understand what can go there and what's possible. Do you also sit down with local residents and those who may not be so pro-development as well, and help them to kind of see where you're coming from?
Mr. Walters.
Through Mr. Chair, the public usually aren't involved in these. It's already gone through public process for the planning stages, so it's a plan-approved subdivision, so they have the ability to develop. All we're doing is making sure that we're mitigating whatever impact that development might have and minimizing the total footprint of the development on the environment.
Okay.
So we don't, the public would be welcome to come to one. Certainly it would be up to the development community as well to allow them in, but yeah, we'd be more than happy to see people involved in some of the charrettes. So.
Great. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Gardner.
Well, here you are at long last, again. And I'm very glad to hear that the construction industry is cooperating, because the last time you were here, if I'm not mistaken, you presented the idea to us, but you weren't sure that the development industry was going to go along with it, so you've succeeded.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the Board of Directors passed the Lake Simcoe protection, or the Lake Simcoe phosphorus offsetting in October of last year. There was a period where we allowed the industry to get used to the idea. There's a tool that we've developed for them to actually model the impact associated with their development on the site. So we did a lot of training with them, and that's the tool that we generally use during these charrettes. So yeah, we're very pleased. The build industry has been very cooperative. This is costing them a lot of money. On average, we're looking at $2,000 a lot. Per house is what they're going to be paying to look at a phosphorus offset. That money is then being used to undertake those projects within our municipal areas.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I imagine the developer will pass that on to the buyer of the home. Could you tell me what year the Conservation Authority was formed?
Our Conservation Authority was 56. They vary depending on who and when, but yeah, we've been around for quite a while. Our authority wasn't formed in response to Hurricane Hazel or to any of the flooding issues. It was actually originally initiated with respect to controlling soil erosion because of the forest being cut.
Something concerns me. Hurricane Hazel would have been in 1953-54, and you said the current floodplain mapping is based on what happened during Hurricane Hazel, and yet Aurora has a lot of homes built in the floodplain, and a lot of those homes were built post 1953-54. So when you're talking about work to retrofit a large part of the urban fabric, Are you talking about trying to help those homeowners?
Through Mr. Chair, exactly. It's the individuals who built prior to the regulation being in effect, and they found themselves in a floodplain. Often they can't get home insurance, and they're subject to frequent flood events. So,
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. And how would homeowners be able to take advantage of that?
The program, through Mr. Chair, isn't really for the homeowners individually. It's through the municipality identifying the best projects that will reduce flooding within the urban fabric. Individuals themselves can't do much on their home if they're in a floodplain, unfortunately. So the whole point of this program is to reduce flow volumes going to the watercourses through proper stormwater management. Reducing the flow volume to the watercourse reduces the flood risk to the individual.
So we, for example, as a municipality, would be identifying the homes that are situated within the floodplain. We would be getting in touch with you to make a plan for that general area?
The plan's already in place, so we have already mapped all the houses that are affected by floods. We know what the elevation of flooding
yes.
will be, yeah, and the velocity. Landowners generally know that they're in the floodplain.
Yes.
Whenever you buy, you're going to do due diligence on your home. Your lawyer's going to tell you you're in a floodplain, and that does make resale sometimes very difficult. Knowing what to do yourself, there's all sorts of information on our website that tells the homeowner what you do during a flood event. And that's the idea behind our EMS program with the region, where we can evacuate those folks as soon as possible when we know a flood is coming.
Thank you. I think those folks would like to have some preventative measures done and not have to be evacuated during a flood. But that's something that we could talk about further. Has the authority done, I mean, we are in now a new normal. Climate change has produced a situation where we're going to have a lot more serious weather events. Mm-hmm. So that's the reality.
Yes.
Has the authority done a systematic review based on this new knowledge and changed any of its assumptions?
That was the basis for the change in our regulation with respect to the stormwater and the site control. Okay. If you can control on site, then you're not letting that water run off, and then you're not contributing to the increase in flow volumes. So all new development and redevelopment is required to do that site control, and it's at a site level as well.
And the comprehensive stormwater management, I don't know if it's a policy, that somebody came to us, I think, 3 or 4 years ago, speaking about that. So that's been translated to an Aurora policy, and now it's up to Aurora to carry that through. And we need to fund that entirely on our own?
Through Mr. Chair, no, that's the game plan with the Lake Simcoe phosphorus offset money, is to start flowing money to our municipal partners. The fact that you have a comprehensive stormwater management plan lays out a number of sites which have already been identified that could be retrofit. What we do is we look at those sites and evaluate, are there other multiple benefits associated with fixing them, like the water quality, the flood retention, and anything else economic. So you will be getting assistance through the authority.
Councillor Gardner.
And I think that our staff at the time and the town at that time was one of the first municipalities to have a comprehensive stormwater management plan. I don't know what we've done with it since then, but it's in place.
Many of the projects, well, 2 of the projects I showed actually were identified within the plan.
Last question. So a year ago, June, we had torrential rains. And, well, of course, it caused huge flows of water everywhere. We had at our northwest corner of Wellington and Yonge, so Wellington and Yonge, northwest corner, north of the Bank of Montreal, we had a retaining wall there. And the force of the water was so great, it blew that retaining wall out into Yonge Street, Wellington Street. So what would you suggest to us with our old structures like that obviously are not doing the job that they're going to need to do? What would you suggest to us for something like that?
Through the chair, I know that staff are working on an asset management plan as part of the PSAP requirements. Those type of structures could be identified as part of the asset management plan. In our EMS mapping, we do show all the roads, any utilities, any of the structures that are going to be impacted by flood volumes. And again, we know how the depth of flood volume, the speed at which the water is going to hit. So that could be used in comparison with the asset management to come up with a plan on assets that you might want to replace sooner rather than later that might have the potential for failure. So I wouldn't presume, though, to tell staff how to do their asset management business. But we could work in partnership, obviously, with them to provide some advice on where these areas are.
Thank you.
Time's up.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Mayor Daw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Michael, for coming out. Councillor Gardner is referring to the event that was June of 2015, which was about the same amount of rainfall, as I recall, as Hurricane Hazel, but with far less of the devastating effects, which shows that the systems and the mitigation that's been put in place in the previous 50 some odd, 60 some odd years is working. There's always ways to improve that, but there's certainly been incredible progress made in that world. Mike, could you speak, if you would, please, to there's an extensive floodplain remapping project going on. Mm-hmm. You're remapping the floodplain lines. And the concept that streets are part of the flood mitigation process, because it's very difficult to build a stormwater sewer system for those events.
Yeah. So through you, Mr. Chair, stormwater sewer systems are usually designed for the 100-year event. We're seeing events greater than that. They're not as great as Hurricane Hazel, but they are greater. Curb and gutter was designed actually to channel flow. That was the purpose behind it. So when storm sewers start surcharging, because they just can't handle the amount of volume of water, the curbs would actually act to channel flow and again try to get the water off out of the subdivisions quicker. So they are part of any design. When you're looking at stormwater management, you are looking at the total system. You're looking at it from what we call a treatment train approach. So it's not just the low impact development of the stormwater pond, it's also what are you doing with any depressions, the street itself. Many floodways within our municipal partners are actually the streets. And it's just to convey that water off out of the municipality as soon as possible into the water courses. So.
Mayor Daw.
And the floodplain remapping?
The floodplain mapping is quite exciting. We're looking for flood relief projects. The National Disaster Mitigation Program looks at a watershed scale, and it actually goes into a greater amount of detail than we have resource for now. But it will identify areas where we can actually undertake works to reduce floodplain. And as I mentioned, there are some opportunities we have identified within Aurora that we're going to be approaching the staff on with respect to maybe looking to see how we can best implement some of those projects.
Mayor
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. I'm not seeing any more questions. Mr. Walters, thank you very much. But I just have one question for you. You mentioned that Lake Simcoe is undertaking flood forecasting warnings, and I'm just wondering, do you have alert responses and how quickly it gets from you to the municipalities?
Through Mr. Chair, yes. When we issue, there's a number of stages of flood preparedness that we start sending out notices to our municipal partners, the police, schools, hospitals, school boards. It goes out to a very broad group of people. Once we actually declare a flood event, we actually form a flood center. We coordinate with whichever municipality the flood is centered over. And we actually set up a management plan to how to best deal with the flood. So there's a lot of steps and preparedness. Our website, right on the facing page of the website, you'll see there's two meters. One is the risk of flooding, and it goes from low, obviously, to high, and then there's the risk of drought, low water response, which is the other side of climate change. So right now we're in a moderate flood watch. And right now Lake Simcoe, for example, is extremely high. So we're seeing localized impacts of a very high lake on the shoreline. but not within the watershed itself.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much for the presentation.
You're welcome.
So all those in favor of receiving the presentation? Opposed? That carries. Okay, move forward. Actually, we have no delegations. So we'll move to the consent agenda. Anyone have any questions on the consent agenda or any items that they would like to move to the regular agenda? Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question on number 1, C1.
C1? Go ahead.
And I would like to pull C2, please.
You'd like to pull C2. So you have a question on C1 and you'd like to pull C2. Why don't you go ahead with your question first?
My question, thank you, Mr. Chair. In the report, it's about childcare, and I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit about those with disabilities. Is the program include the children with disabilities? Is there provisions by the region?
Ms. McDougall?
Or provisions, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, or through you. With regards to the childcare, similar to our other opportunities, working with the region, there is another intake opportunity for inclusion support for individuals that may need support, whether it's for with physical disabilities or with mental disabilities that could come into our programs. We can work with the region to support it in a different way. So the childcare services, we certainly can accommodate participants of that need, but it isn't necessarily honed in on that opportunity. There is another method for us to support those individuals.
Councillor Abel?
Thank you. So in this, those with special needs could, if we knew what exactly it was, you could identify that. Perhaps you could provide that for us at a later date, maybe by council next time. That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. My question is
for C1 as well? Sorry,
yes,
for C1
as
well?
C1.
Okay. Right.
So on page 1 of the report, first of all, I must say I'm really thrilled to hear this. Under background, it says the child care subsidy to low, it's to low income families. That's what we're targeting at the moment. And it says also on this next page, the town has not met the established criteria to be deemed a licensed child care provided by the Region of York, and therefore we couldn't get a subsidy. So what is it that you were able to do in order to get us, I guess, in the region's good graces so that we can offer this subsidy?
Ms. McDougall?
Thank you. There are certain requirements as it relates to the regulations of the number of children, the types of programs, supervisory care for a child, what is the day-to-day activities that that child would be participating in. It comes around more to the child care provision of looking after a child. So what is in our facilities, what is available to that child, and the support staff that provide that opportunity.
Councillor Gardner?
So within that umbrella, the current or the new child care services agreement, that is going to enable children to be also involved in after-school programs and weekend programs that may not be part of the child care time.
Ms. McDougall?
If I understood through you, Mr. Chair, if I understood you correctly, it is an opportunity as it relates to the region has a play program that is more generic about recreational services. It doesn't define it as child care. This expands into the child care genre, the child care element of support for a family. But again, it is very specific to those of low income. And the region, the region will be the one to define who qualifies. The municipality is not part of that assessment.
Thank you. And the way I look at it, it's a subsidy that allows added value to families with low incomes. It's not childcare. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Kim, before I go to you, I'm just going to ask: is this maybe we should pull this item unless you have a really quick question? I know. Is it quick?
Yes, I just have one more question. And the question is, we've recently been we've resolved the licensing issues, and so it seems that we're going to receive some kind of accreditation to start childcare services. So I'm assuming that over the next few months we're undergoing preparation so that our staff will be prepared to be equipped to handle childcare.
Ms. McDougall?
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. The staff certainly will be provided any training that would be required as it relates to this type of service so that we meet the criteria and the requirement of the region.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kim, for keeping that short. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. Perhaps I've misread this. Are we just talking about summer camps? We're not talking about other rec programs that we offer?
Ms. McDougall?
Sorry, to clarify through Mr. Chair, yes, summer camps are being deemed and seen as a childcare opportunity for families. The camps are the option for them to choose from.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Does anyone else have any questions on any of the consent items or want to pull them? No? Okay, if I can get a motion to approve consent items C1, C3, and C4. Moved by Councillor Gardner, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. All right, we will move to items considering separate discussion from our regular agenda. So we'll start with R1. Can I get a motion? Put that on the floor. Moved by Councillor Gardner, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any comments or questions on this one? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Either through you to Mr. Downey or Mr. Nadarosny, it says that under priority 11, it's the third floor build out and that it's being done to accommodate office space. Could you be more specific? Are we moving a specific department? Is this immediate needs, future needs?
I'll go to RCAO.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. We haven't determined which department. We're actually at the LT table starting that discussion now about what the best way to proceed is. But the idea is to relocate one department there, which would create some swing space in this building as we're at capacity. In fact, you've seen us in the lobby on the second floor there pushing out cubicles and so on to accommodate the staff that we have. So we'll decide which group should be in there and move one group over to the JOC facility, and then we'll come back to council with a plan for this building.
Councillor Thompson?
Just, it's something that's been in front of council since I've been on council in 2011. So, you know, I think that it'd be helpful just to stay in the loop about it, and appreciate you coming back, because I know we've had multiple conversations when it comes to town hall space needs. It was one of the ideas why the third floor was put forward for GOC as well, but just to be part of the conversation would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. My question is about the funding. Sorry I didn't get a chance to speak to Mr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott, the recommendation is that about a quarter comes from facilities and parks, and the rest comes from roads and related reserve.
Mr. Elliott.
Through you, Mr. Chair, those are the two funding sources that were used to build the JOC. From the growth side of things, and so this is the proportionate funding split for that.
Councillor Gardner?
I knew you would give us the right proportion, Mr. Elliott. My question is, I don't understand. Well, first of all, facilities is one reserve fund and parks is a second. And I thought parks was like parks for people as opposed to this use?
Mr. Elliott?
Through you, Mr. Chair, perhaps the word facilities is extraneous in this descriptor, but it's parks and parks facilities, development charges reserve fund. And the roads and related is also development charges reserve fund.
Councillor Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Elliott.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Nadarosny or Mr. Downey, I recall that when we were going through the JOC items, that there was a need for an overcoat or a paving of the greenhouse area. So is item 1 or 2, does that cover the greenhouse area as well?
Mr. CO?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the greenhouse floor was identified in one of the reports as an add-on that increased the cost of the original project, so that work has already been done. There is a cement floor in the greenhouse. So the item 1 refers only to paving the unpaved area at the back and the second coat over the rest of the facility.
Okay.
Councillor Kim?
Yeah, thank you. And lastly, so if I'm understanding this correct, this capital or additional budget that's here for the JOC, this will pretty well cover the 1.8 million or so that was taken off the table during the project. So this pretty well writes and fully funds the balance of the JOC. Is that correct?
Mr. CO?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. In fact, there are a couple of small items that were never contemplated in the original bill but were talked about prior to, and they are also included in this. So not only the things that were taken out of the contract, but the other things that were contemplated as part of the eventual completion of the project.
Councillor Kim?
Yes, great. Thank you, Mr. CAO. I'm really relieved to have this chapter of the JOC, at least in my mind, to be closed, and that everything that needed to be in the JOC have been budgeted, accounted for, and all of the requirements for staff are in there. So, and again, it wasn't necessarily that it was over budget, but things that should have been included were not included. So I'm just happy that this chapter is over and that JOC is finally looking the way that it should have been in the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the page 2 and 3 of the report, and it's a chart, I guess, and so they list a cost, but there's no total for that cost. So I'm assuming that when I turn to page 4, the financial implications, the total of those charts equals the sum of 728,000 and 1 million point 5. So just for clarity, sometimes when you see a chart, you see a total at the end. I just want the clarity on that.
Mr. Elliott?
The chart on that concludes on page 3 of 5 totals 2,185,200, which is the amount in the financial implications.
All right,
Councillor Abel?
That would have helped. Thank you. And then under the financial implications, these are both out of development charges. So that's to there's no taxpayers. There's no there's what's the word?
It's not a direct hit to the levy.
Right.
Yes.
So there's no impact on the taxpayers on this. So it still remains tax as it was designed from the beginning. So you've found some other ways through development charges to complete the full scope of the job. And lastly, on the page 4, the approvals from the Lake Simcoe, the fill was placed into the valley. That was done for a cost saving. As rather than take it away. Am I correct? Because I thought that was borne out in the audit. And those costs are still yet, we don't know if there's going to be any mitigation, but if there is, as it says in the report, staff will come back with what it would cost.
Mr. Downey?
To you, Mr. Chair, that's absolutely correct. Okay. We haven't got an answer for that, and the moment we do, we'll be coming back with a report to council with regards to any costs associated with that.
That's great.
Councillor Abel?
And so just a comment, I'm sort of along the lines of Councillor Kim, that we're finally closing the loose ends on this project. It was controversial from the beginning, but one of the main things that was borne out was that there was no project management methodology in place, and that came from the auditor, and that was his comment. And we will take that as something that we learned from that. So as we said at the conclusion of that audit, that is something we will use further for any projects that we are undertaking.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I feel like I'm in a bit of a twilight zone here. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Elliott. Mr. Elliott, before the, well, these funds, some of these DC funds were amalgamated, but I always understood that parks had to do with town parks and facilities had to do with recreation facilities.
Mr. Elliott?
Through you, Mr. Chair, on our reserve fund schedule, the differential between the two is actually there's outdoor development charges, and it's called parks.
Right.
And it's also parks and related outdoor facilities. And then indoor rec. When we funded the JOC, it's shared between the operational group that looks after our outdoor parks and our roads. And so we split the funding between those two funding sources, together with a component of repair and replacement, which was exhausted early on.
Councillor Gardner?
Well, I may speak more to this next week, but to me, indoor rec and outdoor rec has nothing to do with the Joint Operations Center. And I'm also pretty sure, but not positive, that roads and the roads reserve, roads and related, has to do with roads infrastructure. I didn't think it had anything to do with a building.
Mr. Elliott?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in our development charges background study, there was a component for an expansion and completion of our, it's under the heading depots and domes, if you went looking for it.
Sorry, under the heading of what?
Depots and domes,
Yeah,
salt
okay.
domes kind of thing. And so there was a provision in the parks component to build a sort of a operational headquarters where all of their trucks and equipment and supplies and bulk materials are stored, and the men or the staff that are committed to the parks maintenance are housed. And then there is a similar charge in the roads component of the development charges. So the two of them, the two funding sources, shared the growth component of the JOC. And it was planned way back, 5-6 years ago.
Councillor
Right.
Gardner?
Right, and I do recall that, but I'm still not feeling easy about it with respect to what we're doing now, and especially with respect to parks and related facilities. That's what you said?
Mr. Elliott?
And was this amalgamated?
Mr. Elliott?
Through you, I think over time the words that are used for it have changed, but fundamentally the principle of it has never changed. It's never been amalgamated. It's parks, related facilities, and it's depots and domes related to parks maintenance and operations. And then that is distinct from indoor rec, which includes structure of arenas and rec centers and things. That was not used as a funding source for this project. Roads is a separate DC charge, and it also has that component for depots and domes in it as well.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Garner?
And before the amalgamation, parks was just a separate DC, meaning outdoor parks.
Mr. Elliott?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Perry?
Thank you. I heard Councillor Gardner's point. From my perspective, I'm just looking for a little bit of clarification. So through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Elliott. Dan, so what you're saying is the Parks and Facilities Development Charges Reserve Fund is being utilized because a portion of the JOC building is being used as a facility that relates to the maintenance and use to the Parks Department. Is that my understanding?
Mr. Elliott?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, exactly. And the same statement is for the roads. And so those two development charges had a component of a JOC type facility included in developing the charge and collecting the charge.
And that was something that was factored into the development charge study that we undertook. So whenever we look at putting in a roads and related reserve fund, the background information incorporates that we're looking at roads and related to include the facilities that are needed to house the equipment to repair roads, or the facilities needed for roads upkeep. That's always been considered.
Mr. Elliott?
That has always been considered, and if you wish, I'd be happy to flip you a page number to our 2014 development charges background study.
Councillor Perry?
So from my perspective, I think that that is a good indication of why these funds are being used, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the charts on page 2 and 3, there's a number of items that are either listed as cut from design or new requests. And my question is, I suppose, for the CAO, were those items, can you jog my memory, were those items included in the report we would have seen as a council during the 2018 capital budget discussions?
Mr. CAO?
Through Mr. Chair, I think almost all of them. I'm wondering if the gate was on the capital. Was? Okay, I'm getting a nod. So yes, I believe all these things were on the capital list for the 2018 capital budget.
Great, thank you very much.
That's it, Councillor Tom? Thank you, Councillor Tom. Councillor Gardner, I'm being told that this is your third time, so perfect. Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Move on to item number R2. Before we get going, Ms. Mackenzie Smith is going to give us a presentation. Stephanie, you have 10 minutes, and you will hear a chime at 1. And we're going to hold you to that 10.
I might set my own chime. Okay, so just start off with the communications and community engagement strategy. Most of you as councillors have had it for, I think, a couple of months now to review prior to this. And just before we get into it, I want to say that my team actually had a really fantastic time working on this. You know, going out and talking to members of the community was really, really exciting and really interesting, and we got such great positive feedback, and people were really happy to see us out there and asking questions and asking for their feedback. And you know, also the other thing that I've mentioned a few times is working with our municipal partners and working with other municipalities and doing research, you know, on other municipalities and their communication strategies. It's very reassuring to find out that we're pretty much all in the same boat. We all, you know, have the same challenges for the most part. We all have exactly the same, you know, our mission, our vision, our values, and our principles are pretty much all the same. You can pretty much, you know, look at any municipality, particularly in York Region, and we're all really facing the same challenges, and we're all really guided by the same principles and the same vision to do the right thing and really, you know, provide those two-way opportunities for our residents. And so, you know, that was definitely reassuring and interesting in a lot of ways. Certainly our tactics are a little bit different. They depend a lot on our resources and you know, our staffing and our resources and our budgets as well. And, you know, to some extent are the differences, distinctions between our municipalities. But again, like I said, there is a lot of striking similarities between all of us. And certainly I found that in my past life as well at York Regional Police. This is you know, a lot of the work was very similar. So our mission essentially is to foster an empowered community by providing opportunities for meaningful two-way communication and cultivate a culture where collaboration between government and community is valued and encouraged. And our vision is to support the organizational mission, vision, and values by providing a framework for communications that puts our community first in that kind of communication structure. So our guiding principles, we strive to provide opportunities for our community to engage with us on issues that matter to them. And we provide timely, relevant, accurate, and accessible information. So that accessibility piece is something that's relatively new to a lot of municipalities in terms of incorporating those into our guiding principles. We've definitely, and certainly here in Aurora, we've made accessibility a big priority for us. Our third principle kind of goes along those lines as well. We show respect for diversity and inclusivity by improving our understanding of the many cultures that make up our community and by being cognizant of the barriers that may prevent individuals from participating fully in their government. Certainly our community, through our demographic studies as well, we learned is an exceptionally diverse community now, so probably much more so than we were 5-10 years ago, and that's definitely something that we take into account with all of our communications. And we consider the wide range of communication tools available to us and utilize the most appropriate to engage and inform our citizens. This is a very, very, kind of standard best practice across municipalities in terms of principles for communications. We don't want to communicate everything through all channels. The goal is for us to be able to find the most appropriate channel for the most appropriate message to get that to the right audience. We recognize that we can always do better and commit ourselves to ongoing improvement. And our goal is always to kind of keep looking at ways that we can improve and change what it is that we do. So just quickly, the research that we did, we looked at demographics, we looked at Canadian internet habits, social media usage, Canadians' expectations of government, as well as community engagement with government research. We did a plain language audit looking at our communications materials and how easily they are read by the average person. We also did a communications survey, we did a council workshop, we did a youth focus group and a seniors focus group, and we also did several engagement opportunities by just talking to residents out in public. Just a couple of the statistics from the report, which I thought were pretty interesting. Was, are you satisfied with the amount of information available from the town? So we're looking at 88% said yes, that they were, and that 88% also said they know where to go if they need information about the town. So obviously our goal is we have 10% of people that don't know where to go to get information. So that's going to be a focus for us in terms of our communication and making sure that those people know where to go to get access to information so that they can be satisfied with the amount of information that they're receiving as well. So just quickly, some of our demographics, and this is kind of general demographic data. It's certainly not reflective of every individual that lives in our community, but again, it really helps us guide our communication efforts so that we know who the majority of people in our community are. So we live in a very diverse community. We have our residents are highly educated and affluent. Many of them are commuters. They're extremely tech savvy, and there's a high level of internet usage. So all of those things contribute to kind of our tactics in terms of how we decide that we're going to communicate with our residents and address the way we communicate with them. So some interesting research that actually came out of from Ipsos was community engagement and barriers to participation. And so this really helped kind of inform some of our tactics as well. So 62% of people who didn't participate in local government initiatives didn't hear about them. 55% didn't participate because they felt like a few strong voices always dominate. And that also affected the way we went about our research and the way we went about our focus groups. I think in the beginning, some of the intention was to take certain people from the community that we already have a relationship with and gather some data from them, and reading that and finding out that that a few strong voices that are always dominating may be perceived as a barrier to people that haven't participated with their government before. So what we really wanted to do was make sure that all of the research opportunities that we provided were actually open and fair to all residents, so that we weren't targeting specific people for feedback, that we were actually kind of taking the greater population and looking at that from more of a unbiased research perspective. So 39% said that that their community engagement was limited by convenience. 38% that said they weren't interested, and 33% were too busy. So those barriers are really important as well in terms of how we move forward with developing community engagement opportunities that work for people and kind of remove some of those barriers. So how do we overcome those barriers? Communications and marketing, obviously, those are definitely things that we want to look at. Embracing what works. So online surveys, research has shown that online surveys are particularly beneficial. Turning the tables. So don't expect people to come to you. So that was definitely something that we can see from the research around barriers. Pop-up town halls, so actually going out into the community and doing town halls there instead of having people come to our town hall at a very specific time and location. And also community meetings tied to other events and organizations. So some of the things we've looked at are maybe, going out to, if there's a parent-teacher event in a school, going to the parent-teacher event and tagging on a town hall material after that meeting, and getting people's thoughts on some of the activities and events that are happening. And, we think that that's kind of a nice way for people to get engaged when maybe they wouldn't necessarily be engaged otherwise. We found a lot of success with our Go Transit engagement opportunities. So for those of you that don't know, what we've been doing is throughout last year, a couple of times, what we did was we set up town tents at the GO train station in the morning and provided people with engagement opportunities. We asked them for feedback on different topics. We gave them links to surveys. We've been promoting our online engagement tool with them, and we got such fantastic feedback. We provide coffee for people. So Tim Hortons has been very, very helpful in that sense. But, it's really positive experience in going out, and really energizes my team, I know, when they hear from residents, and people are really just happy that we're out there and we're meeting them where they're at and asking them questions and gathering their feedback. We're also doing the same thing with the farmers market, so we're really excited this year. We're going to be at all of these special event days for the farmers market, and which opens on Saturday, by the way. So we're really excited to be kind of out there at those events where we know that people who are engaged with our community are, and using those opportunities. And leveraging community partnerships is another great way for us to overcome some of those barriers with some of the organizations. And our team's been working on developing a database as well of some of those community organizations and getting them to share our messaging. So using technology, we know that we have a very, very tech-savvy community, so that's a focus for us. And then understanding those generational differences in demographics. So this is the IAP2 public participation spectrum model. So it actually is going to be, I can send this to everybody later, but is going to be really central to what our model is for developing a community engagement policy here at the town. So these are our 9 objectives. I'll quickly go through them because I know we've got a short period of time. Create opportunities for customization and personalization, improve consistency and clarity, leverage the technology preferences, promote brand recognition, increase opportunities for two-way communication, build diversity, awareness, and capacity, improve our capacity to proactively respond to issues and tell our stories, continue to use targeted print communications, and ensure our policies and procedures are consistent with intended outcomes. And then finally, our success measures, as well as our timing. So timing, obviously, is really going to be dependent as well on some of the things that were, other tasks and priorities that come forward from council. So our interim, I'll just quickly finish up our interim evaluations. And program evaluation kind of terminology, we consider interim evaluations to be our outputs. And then we consider our final impact to be evaluations to be things like outcomes. So did we change behaviors or attitudes? That's it.
Thank you, Stephanie. First, can I get a motion to refer this to the item? Moved by Councillor Perry, seconded by Councillor Kim. Any comments or questions to the presentation? Councillor Gardner.
I didn't know Ms. Mackenzie Smith could speak so quickly. And I would say in future, this has obviously taken a lot of work on the part of one of our departments. I think we could allow 10 minutes next time. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the powers that be.
Well, Councillor Gardner, if it was 10 minutes, and it was 10 minutes, and if everyone wanted to allow for a little bit longer, we could always waive procedure.
Gee, okay. I was watching my timer there. I thought it said 5:45 or something. But in any case, seriously, when we have a presentation from staff that has involved so much work, I think we could allow a little longer time. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. Sorry. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I see a lot of work's gone into this presentation, and we've talked offline as well about this. And I really believe there's a lot of great actions that are going to take. Obviously, 28 actions according to some of the things you're doing, and we can't help but get really good at becoming a powerful communication source for our community. And I love your pop-up ideas. Go out there, like instead of wait for people to come to us, let's go out there. So every opportunity, little quick ones that you can set up and just talk, get out there. Some of the schools, even parents can pick up the kids, stuff like that. I don't know, but I think it's, I really think it's great to get out there and just do whatever we can to let the community understand what's happening here and that their voice matters to us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Any other comments or questions to the presentation? Seeing none. All those in favor, refer. Councillor Abel popped up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You were wrapping up so quickly there. I did. Who is on your team, if you don't mind?
Ms. Mackenzie Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have a communications and community engagement specialist, a corporate communications specialist, a digital strategist, and a communications coordinator.
Councillor Abel.
Okay. Often we see people with names and stuff, but that's okay. So I'm just getting some idea of this in addition to you. Thank you. And percentages on page 18 with community engagement. You talk, percentages are funny unless you know how many people are there. But with the barriers, so every single item is about percentages. Is there a number that was engaged?
Councillor Abel, I was just going to, is this to the presentation or is this to the item? Because we're still going to have an opportunity to speak to the item.
Well,
we're strictly right now just to the presentation. It sounds like you're speaking to the item, and so we can, if you want to, I'll put you first on the list for the item.
The presentation included communication barriers, community engagement. You were talking about barriers, and you listed they didn't hear about it, feel strong, but Mr. Chair, if you don't want me to ask a question, I'll ask it when it comes on as an item. Fine.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. So all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. So let's start with the item. Can I get a motion to put the item on the floor? Moved by Councillor Tom, seconded by Councillor Humphreys. Any comments or questions on the item? I will start with Councillor Abel, since Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on page 18 of the item, under community engagement, there's a 2017 study from ITSCO indicating that interest in politics and current affairs, and it was all about percentages. So I've just started trying to gather a depth of how many people were interviewed to come up with these percentages.
Ms. Mackenzie Smith.
How many were engaged?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would have to go back and check. That's actually data that wasn't generated through the municipality. That was an outside research firm that developed that. So I can certainly go back and check and provide that information for you next week.
Okay,
Councillor Abel.
Actually, there's a bit of clarity. It wasn't wasn't from our community. It was about communities in large. Okay. All right, so that's basically it. I just wanted to thank you very much. It was very informative, very detailed. I appreciated it.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Councillor Perry.
Just to clarify, on page 13 of the report, it says that there were 378 respondents, both in person and online. Can I confirm that's the number of respondents to the survey that Councillor Abel was asking about?
Ms. Mackenzie Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I felt that he was referring to, I believe it might be, sorry, I'd have to go back, not the Accenture study, or maybe the Accenture study that he was referring to, these Aurora-specific research findings in terms of how residents, their level of satisfaction with communications, as well as their what they were interested in receiving and if they knew where to go about receiving information. That survey, that did receive 378 responses. That's correct.
I believe that's the survey that talks about 88%, and I believe Councillor Abel was asking about that one. Just one quick thank you. I've been harping on how easy it is to read Mr. Ramuno's public notices. So I'm extremely thrilled that it falls within item number 2. People need something that they can read and see and understand, hopefully in color if we want to get really crazy. And I think Mr. Ramuno would appreciate people, seeing these things as well. So I think it's great. I think the report on the whole is fantastic, but really the one thing that sticks out in my mind is that one there. I think that's something simple that we can do that'll make informing our neighbors and our residents easier. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Thompson.
Again, thank you for all the work you've done on it. Certainly, it's great to see us moving forward with a very comprehensive strategy. One question I had with you was in regards to the digital kiosks. So I noted here that, you have plans to put them in the various facilities, and that I guess part of its role is both from an advertisement as well as promotion of town events. And I'm just wondering whether there's an opportunity for community engagement or interactive. One of the things that we've talked about in the past is that, you take the SARC or any of our recreational facilities, and parents are there a lot, and there's an opportunity to sort of get them engaged, for example, get feedback from Library Square or present some of these and get them to, provide some input on it. And so I just want to know if these kiosks will offer the availability to have interactive elements.
Ms. Mackenzie Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, definitely. And I think that's definitely a focus. One of the things that I particularly like is the idea of a table, so where people are sitting and waiting. You can actually make it a digital kiosk where people can charge their phones. It's a table, so people can, they're standing right there. They're not necessarily having to plug their phone in and walk away. There's also benches as well. So Newmarket's doing a solar-powered bench initiative for charging stations. And so we really see that. We also ideally would like to have a touch screen so that we can put up questions so that people can touch the screen and answer that. At the home show that we just had at the Chamber of Commerce, we used our Happy or Not kiosk and actually generated quite a significant amount of responses. And again, that's a very simple, easy way to gather feedback because it's only 3 buttons. It doesn't require people to spend an exorbitant amount of time filling out a survey. And so we would like to kind of take that idea and move that digitally for some of our communications and gather feedback on communications as well.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I think this is a comprehensive report, an excellent report. There's a lot of things in here that we can do quite easily, and from what I can read, although I don't know how much a website update is going to cost, it's not a huge amount of money that we're going to be spending. I do want to ask, though, in the charts, a lot of it just says no cost, just staff time. So I'm wondering, do we have, and I see the timelines are 2018, 2019. I think there's one that's 2020 or a couple that's 2020. So my question is, do we have the staff to be able to do this?
Ms. Mackenzie Smith.
Through Mr. Chair, I am cautiously optimistic. In many ways, we've actually already been working on most of these, many of the items that are already listed in here. We have been working on them as well, and again, I think that we've picked timelines again that are fairly realistic. What I did say in my presentation is that in terms of the timelines, obviously we work at the will of council, and if there's certain projects or issues, priorities that come up that may affect some of those timelines, then what I would like to be able to do is on an annual basis provide a memo to council outlining progress on the strategy itself, and then identifying any concerns that we may have about timelines or how timelines may be impacted by other projects.
Councillor Partner.
Thank you. I think that this report is talking about something that's been missing, and it says here, mission, foster an empowered community by providing opportunities for meaningful two-way communication, and cultivate a culture where collaboration between government and community is valued and encouraged. I think we could do a lot better at that, and I think a lot of the initiatives in this are going to speak to that. Do you have any idea what percentage of the population, it says here 13% are over 65. Do you have any idea, or could you find out what percent of the population is between 60 and 69? And then if you're calling baby boomers 55 plus, what percentage of the population would be baby boomers?
Ms. Mackenzie Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would have to look at, it's all this information, that data is gathered through Statistics Canada, so it would all depend on how Statistics Canada gathers that data. So I can certainly look into that and let you know before next week. I can send you an email.
Thank you,
Councillor
because I'm very pleased to see that seniors are using computers and the internet, but they're also using old-fashioned tech. Maybe that will change, maybe it won't. One of the things you talk about is mobile phones and how a lot of the younger generation and many of us want to use our mobile phones to access the internet or do use it. And that, I believe, if you could speak to it, is something that is lacking at the moment in what we have in place.
Ms. Mackenzie Smith?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So our current website is not designed to be mobile friendly. So it's not what's considered a mobile responsive website. So most websites now, when they're designed, are designed in such a way that they're scalable for a mobile experience. And the way our website was originally built was not built to be mobile responsive. So what there is we employ a service that kind of acts as kind of a translator that translates our existing website into a mobile-friendly version, keeping in mind that there are occasionally functionality issues with that because it's not a completely seamless mobile experience for our residents. It certainly has improved over the years, but the goal would be to have a website that is much more mobile-friendly, as we are seeing a significant increase in the mobile access rates for our website.
So when we develop our new website, that will be part of. And do you have any idea how much that might cost?
Ms. Mackenzie Smith?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe I actually put a request on for the 2018 budget, capital budget, which was yellow lighted. So I will be coming back to council later this year. And we've estimated a cost of to really be able to provide a very comprehensive website and provide some functionality that is really unique. I believe the estimate was between $70,000 and $80,000. I'll have to go back and check. And that would be for a brand new website kind of built from scratch. And we do not want to build a new website before the election. No. We want to ensure that everything functions as it has leading up to that date. So we will be putting together a report later this year to address the website.
Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. I was quite looking at page 20 and 21. I was actually quite shocked and interested to see how do you currently receive information about the town. Only 35 people out of 300 said council meetings. And 40 people said speaking with a council member. I mean, that's, and even digital signs, which I thought were so great for the public. Only 40 people said they received their information through digital signs. And posters were only 47%. I mean, so maybe we're wasting some money in places that we shouldn't. The other thing was the notice board. I would have thought the notice board was much more popular, especially as it's also an online function, and the newspaper's done a great job with that. And of course, 281 people out of 300 said the town website. So we really need to fix up our website. The other kind of shocker was outdoor signs. More than 50% of the people surveyed say they get their information from outdoor signs. I can see you're ready to speak to that. I'm amazed.
Is that a question, Councillor Gardner?
Well, Ms. Mackenzie Smith was ready to hit her by herself.
Ms. Mackenzie Smith, would you like to add something to that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think the outdoor signs are different than the digital signs. The digital signs include the signs outside of our facilities, as well as the signs that are inside of our facilities as well. So we have television screens inside of our facilities as well. Whereas the outdoor signs, those are things that are really very visible. They're on the street. We usually place them in very high traffic areas. And so you kind of can't help but see an outdoor sign. If you're driving anywhere in town, you will see one. So I think It's a fairly old-fashioned, but easy way of getting people's attention.
Well, so many people drive, take public transit, so it is, and we were talking at one point of purchasing one of those signs. I mean, I think we've been renting them, so maybe that would be something to invest in. With respect to how would you prefer to receive information, speaking with a council member goes down from 40 people to 25 people. Again, it's the outdoor signs, the town website, social media, and the biggest one is e-newsletters. So I guess you know where to concentrate. That's all for now.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Before I go to Councillor Abel for a second time, anyone else for the first time? Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm glad Councillor Gardner brought up, because I'm looking at these graphs and they're very interesting, very informative. So e-newsletters, that's like an email blast that we would do, and we are currently trying to gather as many of those, and I think we ask when we post our tax bills that if they want to know about what's going on, especially in emergencies, and we qualify it by saying we're not going to sell it to others or something along those lines. Through you, Mr. Chair, is that correct?
Ms. Mackenzie Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. We do actively promote the e-newsletter. Certainly, we intend on promoting it much more actively as a result of these findings, and realizing that the e-newsletter is a preferred method of communication. So we have been kind of amping up our efforts in terms of making people aware and increasing signups, and we will be continuing that throughout our community engagement efforts.
Councillor Abel.
You know, so I'm looking at page 21, and when we have a notice board, and we have e-newsletter, we can see it's staggering what people prefer. These numbers that you're giving are from page 19, where it says Aurora specific research highlights, which was different than what I was asking, and we clarified that. These are surveys done throughout industry Canadian-wide, so I appreciate that now, and I understand it. It's not the 378 responses previous to that. But what is interesting is, of the 378 responses, people could put down different ways, like there was more than one answer.
Ms. Mackenzie Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. People do have multiple preferences in terms of how they prefer to receive information, so people were allowed to pick more than one.
Exactly. So it wouldn't necessarily add up at the bottom to 378. And that's great for clarity, and I appreciate that. Yeah, and it's great. The charts really illustrate very quickly the stats that you've gathered. Now, the one question I did want to ask is, at the beginning, it says that it was done through digital and what do you call it, in person. So do you have the numbers which it was in the survey?
Ms. Mackenzie Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can certainly get that and email it to you. The online version was significantly more from my recollection, but for the exact numbers, I could get them to you and email them to you.
I appreciate that. And, you know, I call them intercept in person, which means you stand in front of a person and you engage them. And it's one of the best ways to do surveys because it's very complete. And I'm glad that you see the value in that and that you're going to proceed in that method. It's very important at community events such as street festivals, farmers market, etc. So, and again, great report. Well done. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Councillor Abel.
Thank you. On page 43, you've got pop-up town hall meetings, which you've described. I think that's quite a fascinating idea. So we would pick an issue that might be relevant to a particular community, and would we have a council meeting? How would we do that?
Ms. Mackenzie Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So it would be more like a public information center, or as an example. So some of the things that we've certainly talked about actually recently at the ELT table was, providing an opportunity to have multiple public information sessions on one night. So people could actually come into Town Hall, go to different rooms, and move from room to room, depending on what their interest was. And then again, going to, if there was an issue in a particular municipality or a particular, part of town, so say there was an issue that was really mostly, relevant to people in Northwest Aurora, then what we would do is we would actually go and host an event in Northwest Aurora, and we would, if the issue was something where we wanted, as an example, people who maybe have young children to provide feedback and engagement on, then what we would do is we would utilize our existing resources that we have from Ms. McDougall's team and get childcare resources in place as well, so that we can better support and reduce those barriers to engagement that have been clearly identified.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I think that's fantastic. The cost estimate is $1,000 per year. On page 44, I love the relationship building with faith and cultural leaders. With respect to translated advertising, would we be putting how would we do that?
Ms. Mackenzie Smith.
It's not a lot of money. It's $1,000.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So what our initial proposal would be to try, testing out a event or two that we wanted to promote, and translate that particular material into another language, and then be able to, get that information out through community leaders that, that maybe have a connection with certain community groups, and as well as, in grocery stores or other locations where we want to target making sure that all members of our community, not just those that are native English speakers, can get access to that information and be aware of those events.
Councillor Gardner.
Well, so would we put that in English? Would we give it to them in English and in another language? Which would be my preference.
Through Mr. Chair,
Mackenzie
yes.
Smith.
It would be in multiple languages.
But when let's say we translate it into Greek, it would also be in English as well? Thank you. And with respect to the last one on the chart, biannual mailer to registered subscribers. I'm guessing you're talking about the e-blast, the e-letter?
Ms. Mackenzie Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair. That actually refers to a mailer that would be mailed out specifically to registered subscribers. So that did come about through some of our conversations, our focus group with the seniors, who felt that they would also like to receive, a mailer just once or twice a year, that provided them with certain. That wasn't a tax bill, yes, or a water bill. That provided them with some information on activities and events that may be of interest to them. So we thought, we would pilot that and see. Again, we are seeing trend move towards more digital communications, even with the seniors. They were very clear on that. But it is something that we want to consider for those residents who may feel that they're not being engaged sufficiently.
Thank you. I did read somewhere in here we were talking about 3 water bills a year I don't know, water bills and tax bills. And the thought was to put something in there as well, because that would save us postage.
Ms. Mackenzie Smith.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is something that we already do. We already send out information inserts with our tax bills as well as our water bills. So we do currently send out information. I think the idea that they wanted to see something that was separate from a bill that they were receiving, that was, a little bit perhaps friendlier in nature. No offense to our friends in finance.
Well, and I see Mr. Elliott wants to answer, and I know Mr. Elliott worked really hard on including a lot of information in the tax bills.
Mr. Elliott?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's important to understand that not all residents receive a tax bill. Many are mailed to the mortgage companies. Many are paid by pre-authorized payments, so they get a statement mid-year. So the timing is awkward. The use of water bills generally gets to more residents, but not everybody has a water bill. There are some people in town that are on wells and septics, and so they don't receive a water bill. And also water bills are spread out over 3 months before we cover the whole town. So it's awkward to get a short notice message out to everybody through either the tax or the water bill. But we work with communications to the best of our ability.
Thank you. And I would say many seniors, or more and more seniors, are living in condos and apartment buildings, and well, maybe a condo would get a water bill, but apartments wouldn't. Anyway, thank you very much. It's really an impressive report.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Any other comments or questions? I just want to say, Ms. Mackenzie Smith, thank you very much. I think it's a great report, and I'm looking forward to you guys implementing a lot of new measures. I just wanted to make a comment that I think it's quite evident from the report that social media is very, very important when it comes to keeping residents informed. Hopefully, I think that we can find efficiencies moving forward and maybe make a bigger transition towards that social media presence. So thank you very much. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Move forward to R3. Can I get a motion? Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Mayor Daw. Any comments or questions on naming of parks? Mayor Daw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Downey, not necessarily, Mr. Downey, not necessarily the naming, but just the official opening for Mavernack. And we've been kicking that around a bit. So through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Downey.
Through Mr. Mayor, through Mr. Chair, I apologize. We are trying to find a date. We've been contacted by Activate Aurora. They want to participate. I want to poll members of council to determine whether they would like it on a weeknight or on a weekend, and what type of events they would like to see. So we are continuing to trying to find a date that works.
Mayor,
but we plan on having an opening. We just don't know when.
Mayor Daw.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's 2 parks, one on page 3. It's location 4, and one on page 4. It's location 1. So I'll speak to the first one first on page 3. There's no records connected to the land, and maybe this is a parkette we should save for the hospital to auction off. So I would like to, I don't know if I have to make that motion, but I would like to make that motion that we could call it Forest Grove Parkette, or we could let the hospital take advantage of. So,
Councillor, if you'd like to make that amendment, you're more
I would
than
like to make that amendment.
Seconded by
Councillor
Humphreys. Any speakers to the amendment? Which location exactly again? The clerk is asking.
Phase 4 Parkette. It is on the map.
Yeah. So location 4, Mattamy, Phase 4 Parkette, Forest Grove Court. Is that the one?
Yes, and it's on page 3 of the report.
Okay.
And it's middle of the page. It is complete, but I think we can leave it without a name. It's a small park. It's a parkette. The other one, and I don't.
Wait.
Oh,
we're going to speak
sorry,
to the amendment.
We have to vote to it.
Yes. Well, I got 2 speakers. Mayor Daw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no problem reserving that, but the hospital, which this gets auctioned at the gala, which is not till the fall of 2019, we have been contacted by a representative from Hillary House to see if we could do that for the Hillary House Ball, which is coming up this fall. So I would, with the permission of the mover, if we could look at that as opposed to South Lake, I'm sure that we'll have another opportunity when as we move through the process for South Lake.
I think we may, I know there's not a lot of parks or parkettes left, but we may want to have a policy around this, because if
Councillor Garner, can I make a suggestion? Because I'm hearing what Mayor Daw is saying, and I understand where you're coming from as well. And so maybe we can just leave this an open-ended instead of making it specific to the hospital. What we can say is that not name this at this moment and leave it open so that we can put it forward for someone to have
as a fundraiser,
fundraiser for naming rights, and that way we can decide at that moment in time which one we choose.
Does
that work for you, Councillor Gardner?
It works for me. Does it work for the seconder? Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. So is everyone good with that? Understand what we're doing? Okay. Okay. They're going to change that. So, Councillor Humphreys?
Mr. Chair, I was going to mention the same fact. I wasn't going to label South Lake, although I absolutely support South Lake, but like Mayor Daw said, Hillary House, maybe there's other large charities or small charities that would really appreciate this opportunity, and maybe they could ask or approach the town, are there any parks available? So maybe those ones that don't have a tie or connection to the lands, like you noted, can be maybe temporarily named, but can be changed to allow for some really great opportunities to pay, to help charities move forward. I love the idea. It goes great at the charities when they're auctioning off, and it's exciting for the people who purchase it. So I love the idea.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, similar to Councillor Humphreys. I mean, I prefer that we're just reserving it for future fundraising event. I think there are a lot of good organizations out there who may be interested in this, and be good to give them an opportunity to weigh in or contact the town, and then perhaps look at them and decide which one would be the most appropriate at this time, as opposed to picking it or choosing an alternate tonight. Notify different groups.
Perfect. Councillor Gardner?
But I think we need to have some sort of parameters around this, because it's a great fundraising opportunity for everyone. And I don't know who would be in charge of that, but I think we have to have some fairness in the process. And if the mayor was mentioning the Highland Gate Park, I'm not sure if we could maybe divide it up into segments and let people auction that. Why not? It's a great way to raise money, and it doesn't cost us anything.
Nope, perfect. And Councillor Gardner, I think maybe our CAO is listening, and we can look at putting a strategy forward as far as a future policy in regards to naming rights and fundraising. Thank you for bringing this up. Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think just in light of South Lake, if we did auction off, we could use those proceeds for Team Aurora and reclaim the South Lake trophy.
Seeing no more questions or comments on the amendment, you've already spoke twice, Councillor Gardner, on the amendment. But you're fine, I think. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? That carries. Back to the original motion as amended. Go to Councillor Thompson.
I was.
You still have.
I was speaking about page 4. A lot of the parks have names that belong to people who are important to Aurora, or who own the land. The one I'm looking at, Benjamin Pearson Parkette. The one below that, that land was owned by that family until 1949. But when we have the Benjamin Pearson Parkette, and I hope I don't insult any of the relatives who may be living here, or living period, they only had that land until 1867. So to me, that is, it is also a parkette, and I would prefer to have that also as an opportunity to auction off.
Is that another amendment?
That's another amendment.
Seconder? Councillor Perry? Speaking to the amendment? Councillor Garner?
I think it's very important we honor heritage, and even in a case like this, whatever the name of the park is, I don't think it precludes us from putting on the sign occupied this property from 1806 to 1867. It doesn't preclude that heritage detail, but I don't think that this parkette and name is in the same category as the other ones that we've named after, for heritage purposes, after people.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Mayor Daw.
Thank you. Could I go, please, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Downey with respect to maybe a bit of background on how you came up with the name in the first place?
Okay. Mr. Downey?
I apologize. The process we went through?
Well, just, yeah, specifically to the Benjamin Pearson Parkette.
So what we do is we work with our curator and try to find some historical connection with those lands. We found that it was very well received in the community when we do this, and we've done it on several occasions. So if we don't find a record, we've identified that. But if we do, we think that it's nice to tie some of the history to the lands, and it tells a story. We have no objection to selecting a different name, but we felt that this was the most appropriate name from an historical perspective.
Thank
Mayor
you.
Daw?
Thank you, sir. And through you to Mr. CAO with respect to a policy, and you and I have had a quick chat because I've arranged for a parkette to be auctioned off and a street to be auctioned off, or street name, and I was quite frankly very disappointed at the money we did not raise for it because if the street name is in perpetuity. You're not going to do it for 20 years and then move on to something else. So do we have a policy in place, or are we working on one that sets out some criteria that there should be a minimum bid, that type of thing, depending perhaps on what the organization is?
Mr. Seo?
Through Mr. Chair, we, as staff, we did discuss this the last time this came up, and for, I believe it was the Hospital Foundation, and we had conversations with them, but it wasn't based on a solid policy, so we do need to get that into writing. But we do expect for the parkettes and for streets and things like that, a certain minimum would be raised. So we'll get that into a form of a policy and bring it to council.
Okay.
Mayor Dow?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So may I suggest maybe we could just park this, no pun intended. We could. Not nearly as funny as Councillor Perry's. If we could just put this aside and come back to it when we've had an opportunity to look at the policy. I don't know the best plan to do that.
Are we, Mayor Dow, are you suggesting that we put aside the whole item?
No, just the one.
Just this one specific one. Okay.
Table it. So I don't know to the clerk what the best way to do that would be.
Before we do that, let me let Councillor Thompson speak, if you'd like to.
I was just say that while I appreciate the intent to auction off the various parkettes, we do have a policy. We've asked staff to do the research and come back with, and where they have identified a family that has a connection, I'd rather adhere to staff's recommendation. And so I would not have been in favor of changing this particular designation to auction off a park, and so that would have been my thoughts on it. But if you want to refer it back to staff for further discussion, that's fine. But I think that in this case, staff have done what we've asked them. They've tried to adhere to our policies, and I would support naming it the Benjamin Pearson Parkette.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. So the clerk really doesn't know what we're asking him to do, so I'm going to make a suggestion. You'll withdraw that and just leave it? So, okay, let's just vote on what's on the floor. All those in favor of the amendment to reserve this for a future fundraising event, location 1? All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Back to the main motion as amended. Councillor Thompson. Or Councillor Gardner, did you still have a little bit more? You're done? Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Just a quick question. On page 3, location 3, the Richard and Sandra Gladden Park, it said that this park was auctioned off for the 2013 South Lake Gala, and so I just get some clarity around whether, did we miss this? I mean, it's a 5-year gap before we've gotten around to actually naming a park. So I just want to know if the intent was always for this park to be named a few years after or not.
Mr. Downey.
To Mr. Chair, so part of the issue here is when it was auctioned off, it wasn't developed. we normally don't label a park until it's actually completed. So it's just been recently completed, which is why the name has come forward. So it'd be our recommendation in the future that if we're looking at naming a park, it should be a park that's already constructed and yet unnamed, much as we are doing here. And that's one of the reasons for the delay. We have contacted the family. We did apologize it took so long, but that was the reason.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Seeing no other comments or questions, call the vote. All those in favor? Really? All right. Okay, I'm going to separate. So how about, okay, I'll call number 1. All those in favor to receive. All those opposed, that carries. Number 2. Oh, well, yeah, actually that doesn't really work. What's there? Well, no, because it's... Mr. Clerk, how would you like to do that one?
We could vote it with under the understanding that locations 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 be approved, or with the exception of locations 4
Okay,
and
so
1.
how about number 2 is, yeah, there you go for 7. It's just changed. So how's that? So number 2, all those in favor for the 7 locations. Opposed, that carries. Number 3, location number 4. All those in favor? Opposed, that carries. Number 4, location number 1. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Who didn't? Did someone not vote? Let's do that one more time. All those in favor of location 1, hands up high. Opposed? That carries. Move to R4. Can I get a motion? Moved by Councillor Tom, seconded by Councillor Humphreys. Comments or questions on this item? Councillor Humphreys.
Just a really quick question. I support the motion. Just want to know, I guess my question is, it's kind of a low, I know it's council contingency, is because the Historical Society doesn't have any more funding to fit that little bit of money.
Are you wondering why this is in front of us and why staff weren't able?
Exactly.
Mr. CO?
Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Council may recall that the Historical Society presented at the budget open session and asked for a contribution towards storage. At the time, they weren't sure what the amount was going to be, and when Council turned down all the options at one point, and then you'll recall staff came back with a suggestion as to how Council might move forward with all of the options and still meet the budget requirements. And at that time, because we didn't know the precise number for this one, we left this off and we said that we would bring this back to council once they formalized their request. So it's here before you now.
Great, thank you very much.
Councillor Humphreys?
That's it. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Any more comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. R5. Can I get a motion? Moved by Councillor Tom, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Oh, Councillor Gartner at the last minute.
At the last second. So I'm assuming I'm looking at the McClellan Way, which is used by a lot of residents to get to their homes. So my question is, I don't know who would know this. We have an evaluation tool in place. It's from 2011. So are we certain that the person that the contractor that we've chosen is fully qualified to do this work? Because this could affect hundreds, maybe even thousands of residents in this area.
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, Councilor Gardner, are you referring to the contractor, whether the contractor is qualified?
Councilor Carter?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, no, they are, and they've done similar projects in other municipalities as well. So yeah, we're confident that they're qualified to do this type of work. Again, it's just a resurfacing, asphalt resurfacing.
Thank you. And thinking through you, or just as a comment, because we have C2, I believe, is about Brookland tonight, and it talks about a lot of things we're going to put in place to ensure that we pick the right contractor. But I just want to make sure that staff and the Mr. CAO have confidence in this contractor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gardner. Councilor Thompson.
Thank you. I guess through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, in the past when we've talked about road rehabilitation and the cost associated with capital projects, we've been usually fairly good at estimating those because we do a number of projects every year and the road work is fairly predictable. But yet when I looked at this, the budget for this, you're asking for an increase of a little more than 10%. So is there any particular reason why our estimate was off by $75,000?
Mr. Ramuno?
To you, Mr. Chair, no, aside from, again, it's an estimate at the time when we put that capital project sheet in, and the other variable could be, the price of asphalt and petroleum does fluctuate quite a bit.
Thank you.
Seeing no other comments or questions, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next item, our R6. Can I get a motion? Moved by Councillor Kim, seconded by Councillor Humphreys. Any comments or questions on this one? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. R7. Motion. Moved by Councillor Tom, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any comments or questions on this one? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. R8, which is C2, and I believe Councillor Abel pulled this one. So Councillor Abel, can I get a motion?
I'll move it.
Moved by Councillor Abel, seconded by Councillor Gartner. Councillor Abel, I'm assuming you'd like to start?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and of course, the scope of this work it's quite it's controversial and well known. But what I really wanted to point out, in addition to a lot of the activity that was with this, and there's no point going on, but is the devastation of the plant life, the big trees, and how it impacts the ability to retain the water that pours into that part of the Tannery Creek that goes downstream. And it's stark how much of the vegetation was removed. And I'm sure there's probably an explanation, but I don't know what it would be. But if you've ever driven by it, and I'm sure a lot of us have, it's just stripped bare, bank to bank, right? Like there's nothing left. And how is that going to impact the flood mitigations that we have in place? So it is clear. And I think, Mr. Ramuno, you would like to speak to that. So I'd appreciate, Mr. Chair, that opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. No, again, a number of trees had to be removed because of the slopes, trying to stabilize the slope. But one thing to keep in mind is we do have a replanting program that will occur this spring, this summer. So there will be plantings within that area that you'll see over the next few months.
And fair enough, Mr. Ramuno, but these were very big, mature trees, and these little plants that we're putting in will take years, decades to bring back the protection value that those trees had. Collectively, it was a canopy that, and now, the runoff is going to be significantly different than what we were normally. So, it's interesting. Perhaps, I don't know how we can monitor it, but I guess we'll see when we have these torrential downpours, what the impact will be. But again, it's just a matter of having contractors the sensitivity of some of these projects that they're doing. and this is just the residents that have pointed it out to me. I have talked to several of the residents, and this is very concerning, that on both sides, on both culverts, was just cleaned back.
Was there a question? Just a comment? Thank you, Councillor Abel. Any other? Oh, Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank staff for putting together this report, and I just want to confirm for everyone's purposes the 5 analysis points that's put in here: the procurement processes, traffic control plans, contract management improvement / liquidated damages, contractor performance tool, communication strategies. Those are items that are being implemented now, and it's not something, it's not just an analysis for review, but it's something that's being implemented now, and all those 5 things will be implemented going forward. Is that right? Through you to Mr. Ramuno.
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. I mean, the only one that we haven't implemented yet, but we will be implementing in 2019 is the procurement process to change to pre-qualification of contractors moving forward. But the other points, we've implemented those strategies. And of course, we can always do better, especially with respect to our traffic management plans and communication strategies. But we have been working very hard to provide that extra communication to our businesses and residents who will be living through some construction projects this spring and summer.
Okay, great, thank
Councillor
you.
Kim?
And I'll just get one more other comment, and I'll just save the rest for next week. But regarding the pre-qualification process, it's common to have either 3 or 5 year windows or interval process where pre-qualified contractors can come in and have that 3 years of, we're going to just look at these 3 or 4 contractors for a certain road construction project. To make things a little bit more efficient, because if the fewer the contractors to choose from, the less advantageous potentially from a cost savings perspective. Is there any way to, and some of these pre-qualified contractors, you need a certain amount of scale or size to bid and actually complete the project. Is there any way that we can divide these projects into 2 or 3 components so that smaller players can be pre-qualified and still do the work? They can do stage 1, and then they can do stage 2 and 3, as opposed to one large pre-qualified contractor to do the full job. Can you give me the pros and cons of that suggestion?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think the intent of staff was to, with respect to the request for pre-qualification, there'd be groups of pre-qualified number of contractors for specific road projects versus stormwater management projects. That's the line of thinking. Okay. And again, it's a question of whether we go through the process every 2 years or 3 years. In some instance, you can every 5 years. I know in the past, with respect to when we pre-qualified design consultants, it was we did that back in 2013, and it lasted for 5 years. And we're going to go through that process again in 2019, and that's specifically for the design consultants. So it's something that we can consider with respect to the time period of that process.
Councillor Kim?
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. I'm going to speak to this next week as well, but in the meantime, on page 1, well, first of all, I think Ms. Michael did a very, very good job, and I appreciate if you would pass that on. I was hoping she might be here to answer some questions. The bottom of page 1, it says staff analyze the challenges and successes. Could I please know what the successes were? And it could be mentioned next week if Mr. Ramuno doesn't know.
Mr. Ramuno, do you have an answer for us, or do you want to wait till next week?
No, but I could wait till next week. I think this is actually the wording from the motion itself, but I can. speak to
right.
Anka and report back, have an answer for you hopefully next week.
Are you fine with that, Councillor Gardner?
Thank you. I think it is from the motion. This is something that I spoke to Mr. Nader-Osney about. There was a blue pipe in the culvert that was not supported properly, and I spoke to staff about it. The next time I looked, it was covered over with earth. So it says here that we're doing storm sewers. Excuse me for a moment. We're doing full depth construction, so we're really trying to get the water under control in this area. So through you, perhaps to Mr. Muno. Mr. Muno, could you tell me what the blue pipe is? What the purpose is?
Mr. Ramuno?
Typically, that is the water. I'm not familiar with that exact pipe, but typically that's the water. The blue pipe is typically the water main.
Councillor Gardner?
So,
the new water mains that were installed.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. CAO, I'll refresh your memory. You've got a lot going on. My concern was that this blue pipe was definitely not remediated. And when I spoke to our staff about it, it was when it was already covered over. And I don't believe that they had the opportunity to check this pipe out. And I was told that it would be taken care of at a different part in the construction. But my guess is that it was just buried over, and it may cause us some concerns in the future. So I would like for you to try and find out from staff. It wasn't supported properly. The concrete that it was sitting in, the concrete cradle, was quite broken up. So I'd just like to have an opinion from staff on that. We did have some emails about that. One of the things, I'm looking at page 3, and it's towards the bottom of the page. Improvements in some key areas is specified. I would like to add an extra bullet point. That is town oversight. I think, of course, the contractor needs to have oversight, but if we don't have proper oversight from our staff, we won't know if the contractor has proper oversight unless the residents complain. So I guess for you, to Mr. Muno, do you see the bullet? Do you see the area? It comes after communication strategies and customer care.
What page, Councillor Gardner?
I'm on page 3, towards the bottom. These are the improvement areas: procurement processes, traffic control plans, contract management, contractor performance evaluation tool, and communication strategies. We need to have something in there about town oversight protocols.
Mr. Ramuno, is that something that you can just add into the report?
Certainly, it's something that we can address moving forward, and I think it's something that we would be dealing with under the contract management improvement bullet point. But I'll take that back.
Is that good for you, Councillor Gardner?
Thank you very much. I would appreciate that. I mean, there's going to be a lot of improvements made, and I think that's the only success, perhaps, of this project.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Mayor Daw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't believe it's appropriate for councillors to be changing reports. If we want to change the recommendation, that's fine. That's our purview. I don't think it's appropriate for us to be rewriting reports. So if there's an issue with something, the report entirely should go back to staff. We should be, I don't believe that we should be editing it.
I can appreciate your point, Mayor Daw, but I do also see Councillor Gardner's point that she's just asking that if staff could look at adding that at if they feel so that it will make the recommendation better moving forward. So we'll allow it, I guess, for now. Yeah.
Mayor Daw. On the floor to refer this back to staff.
Seconder? Seconded by Councillor Perry. Any comments or questions on the referral? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Is the expectation then if it gets referred back to staff that the report would come back with that bullet either included or not included based on staff's prerogative? Is that the intent? Through you to Mr. Ramuno, is that how you understand it?
Mr. Ramuno? Or Mr. Ramuno?
To you, Mr. Chair. We can certainly perhaps expand on, I understand Councillor Gartner's point with respect to ensuring there's the proper staff oversight on these projects, and I think our intent was to deal with that through the under the contract management improvement section. So if we need to clarify that section of the report, we can certainly do that. I can certainly do that.
Councillor Thompson.
Through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, is it not implied in the report that there is a degree of town oversight?
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, it's my belief that I thought we had covered that off, and it's something that certainly we take seriously.
Thank you.
As staff.
Councillor Gardner, to the referral.
I understand what the mayor is saying. I do believe, though, that referring it back to staff is not the way to go. It does say the engineering division will continue to employ certain strategies used, as well as make specific improvements in some key areas specified below. So it could be phrased in such a way that staff look at this section to see if town oversight, or maybe employees oversight, or something like that, town oversight be included in one of the ways to improve the process.
Okay. Mr. CO.
Through Mr. Chair, if it's sent back to staff, I'll take from this discussion that we want some clarification of what oversight is done and how and what improvements, if any, we might make to oversight. I wouldn't want to narrow it to staff oversight. Okay. In some specialized projects, we engage another professional on our behalf to provide the oversight.
So it'd be town oversight.
There's different ways that we provide that oversight in a contract, so I'd want to keep it general.
Councillor Gardner.
So could this be looked at by staff in the coming week and come back to council with a notation like that, or do you feel it's preferable to refer the whole report back to staff? Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. CEO.
Mr. CEO. I guess the question is, are we, I mean...
We're referring it next week? Are we referring it to next week? No.
No, the recommendation moving forward would be to refer this back to staff, and so next week we would be ratifying that decision. So therefore, after next week, it would be referred back to staff, and then it would come back to us at a later date. Yeah. And since this is just an informational report and it's just to be received, I think we can give staff a little leeway and have them take some time and come back with what some of the suggestions are coming from this table.
Thank you. I was involved with this project when it didn't start on time from the beginning of July all the way through to the fall. And this project was a horror story, and my opinion is that when we're looking at ways to improve how we handle these kind of projects, that there has to be in it something about town oversight. I don't know if town oversight was lacking in this case, but I think that's a very important component. And so however council wants to do this, I don't particularly care, but I do want to have, as Mr. CEO said, clarification for council and for the residents.
And Councillor Gardner, I think everyone around this table wants to make sure that moving forward that any construction management is done properly and we have the proper policies in place, and so I think that's why the mayor requested that we refer this back to staff, and I think that's a good way to take this and good approach. So and we'll get the result I think that we're all looking for. So thank you. Councillor Thompson?
I'm fine if council chooses to refer back to staff. However, many times we've had reports in front of us seeking further clarification, and staff have provided us with a memo or an addendum to it between now and council meeting. It's through you to Mr. Nadarozny or Mr. Ramuno. Would it not be possible just to have a one-page memo for next week that kind of expands upon the points that are being raised?
Mr. CEO?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I follow the bouncing ball here, the original request was to modify the report, which the mayor asked then if the report was to be modified, that it should go back to staff to be modified. And so on that basis, we're prepared to modify the report and bring it back in the next cycle. I think I defer to the clerk, but I think you're suggesting an alternate method to achieve what the mayor was looking for, and so I'd leave that to council to decide which method you prefer.
I should say in the past, because Mr. Ramuno has said that it's implied in the report, in the past we've gotten memorandums that provide clarification on many, many reports, and that's how typically we've handled it. So, if it's possible to do that, that's my preference, is to be consistent.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. All those in favor of the amendment? The motion to refer.
Excuse me.
Oh, Councillor Gardner.
Sorry to belabor this, but Mr. Ramuno did say, and this report does say, the ways in which we are going to improve our process going forward. And one of them is...
Councillor Gardner, I'm going to stop you because we need to be speaking to the motion to refer.
Yeah,
specifically.
So in speaking to the motion to refer, if what I'm talking about is in the new policy or is in the intent in the new process, then that would be that would be the important information to have. I just want to know that going forward, we have that base covered.
And my suggestion, Councillor Garner, would be that if you are in favor of referring this, that you contact Mr. Ramuno offline and have those conversations and make sure that when it comes back, it has those specific items that you would like to see.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not in favor of referring it. I'm in favor of a memo or additional information. Okay. I don't want to put this off. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Dahl.
I'm happy, Mr. Chair, to withdraw my referral. If we can get if Mr. Nadarozny or Mr. Ramuno feel that we can accomplish this with a memo, I'm happy to do that, if that's okay with the seconder.
Before we allow the withdrawal, Mr. CEO, can this happen for next week?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm certain we can provide a memo to clarify that part of the report.
Thank you. So we'll withdraw the motion to refer. I'm okay with that. Are you okay with that? I figured you were because you already looked at me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl.
Do we need a motion for that?
Nope.
No, it's just the motion to receive, and next week we'll get the memo as promised from our CEO and Mr. Ramuno. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. To not, yeah. Moved by, seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor of waiving procedure? Hands up. All those in favor of waiving procedure? Opposed? So that carries. So let's continue. New business. I'll start to my right. Mayor Dahl.
Thursday on April the 10th, Victim Services is having a lip sync contest over at King Valley. And there's a rumor that the Mamas and Papas are going to be there. May 10th. Yeah. What did I say? Oh, wait. Anyways, there's tickets available. You'd have to Google it. I'm sorry, I don't know the website, but it's a great event.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Councillor Gardner, new business?
No.
No? Thank you. Councillor Thompson, new business?
To elaborate on new business, just want to say that the Run for Southlake was a great success on Sunday. We had, a sold-out event. I think it raised almost $175,000. And unfortunately, the Team Aurora did not win the Mayor's Challenge. However, congratulations to EG. They raised over $13,000 for the hospital, so good for them. And certainly thanks to all the staff and members of council who participated.
Councillor Humphreys. New business. No? Councillor Tom? Councillor Kim? Councillor Perry? I just have one quick one. Ms. Van Leeuwen, if someone is having a garage sale and they want to put a sign out, do they need a permit?
Well, they all do. Tied to every pole in town.
I had a resident ask me because they're going to be having a garage sale and they just wanted to know to make sure that they're complying.
To you, Mr. Chair. Off the top of my head, I don't know the answer to that, but I can check the bylaw and send you an email.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, that's it. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Moved by Mayor Doss, seconded by Councillor Kim. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much, everyone. It's a good meeting.